Hi, my name is Chris and this is Battle Nonsense. Today I want to talk about Battlefield servers. On the Xbox and the PlayStation, EA has to pay the bill for the majority of the servers that you are playing on. This means that EA will only lose money there as Battlefield does not use a subscription model. In order to reduce costs, they made the backend smart so that it powers down servers when they are not needed. If there are a lot of players active and the game is running low on servers, then the system will start to spawn more server instances. Another measure to reduce costs is to reduce the amount of data centers inside which the servers are hosted. But what that also causes is that you have a lot of out-of-region players and players with a very high latency, because they live far away from the data center. This is why you see much more players with high latencies on the console than on the PC. And this now should also make it a bit more obvious why many games do not use dedicated servers on the console, but go with the matchmaking design where one player is the server. And when that server leaves, you get the infamous migrating hosts on your screen. But you eliminate the server costs that way. So this is why a lot of games prefer that matchmaking over dedicated servers. Now the PC is completely different. Nearly all the servers that are running there are paid for by the community, which gets these servers from gameserver providers, which are referred to as GSP or RSP. For a company to be allowed to host ranked game servers, they need to sign a contract with EA and fulfill certain technical requirements. So EA does not have to pay for the servers on the PC, the community does. But there's a little bit more to it. Since Battlefield 2 we have ranked game servers, and for each ranked server instance that is running, the GSP has to pay a fee to EA. This is the same for Battlefield 2142, Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3. But in Battlefield 4 this changed a little bit. Now the fee is calculated per server slot, not server instance. So if you have a 64-player server with 2 commanders and 2 spectators, then this makes 68 server slots. So the game server provider then multiplies the fee by 68 and this is what EA gets for your server. If you have a 32-player server with no commander and no spectator, then the game server provider has to multiply the fee by 32, and that is what EA gets per month for your server. But that fee is of course already calculated into the game server costs, so ultimately the person who rents the server pays it. So as you can see, the ranked game servers on the PC do generate quite a steady income for EA. As I mentioned before, out-of-region players and players with high latency or high ping are a much bigger issue on the console than they are on the PC. Because on the PC we have much more game server providers. But as many people noticed, on the PC we have more high ping players in Battlefield 4 than we have in Battlefield 3. Why is that? The answer is quite simple and some of you might even remember. Close before the release of Battlefield 4, EA published a list of game server providers. And that list was shockingly short compared to all the previous Battlefield games. Quite a few game server providers who were allowed to host Battlefield 3 servers did not get a contract to host Battlefield 4 servers. So I'd say that EA did have good intentions. However, what they did not consider is that they actively increased the amount of out-of-region players and players who have a high latency. Players who have a Battlefield 3 game server close to where they live might not have such for Battlefield 4. There were already regions which didn't have servers for Battlefield 3, and in Battlefield 4 the amount of regions and countries without servers was increased by that decision of EA. And we all know what kind of impact players with bad connections have on this game. I don't blame the players here. They bought the game which they want to play, but there are no game servers close to where they live. So neither console nor PC players are happy about the game servers. But console players have even more reason to complain. Not just because they have even less server locations than we have on the PC, they don't even have the admin tools available to properly manage the servers, which they are paying for with their own money, just like the admins for the PC servers. Now, I know that there are PC players out there who look down to the people on the console. And the console players respond in the same way. As well as we have console players tear themselves apart because the game is available on 2 different platforms. And one is obviously better than the other. All these heated discussions and wars are pointless. There is no reason at all that we get angry at each other. We should be angry with EA, because what we are entitled to is a game that is optimized for each platform. No shortcuts, no slacky solutions. We need the best on each platform. So what I don't understand is why the implementation of rental servers is so bad on the console. because as I've said before, EA has to pay for a lot of the servers that you play on the console. So if I would be EA, then I would look into solutions to make the players on the console rent more servers and generate some more money that way, like on the PC. But if you want to get the people to rent servers, then you also need to give them control over them, because why else would they rent a server? So how can we give the admins on the console more power? The first idea you might have is to just add more admin functions into the game. That is quite a good idea for the next games, but I don't think that this will happen for Battlefield 4, because it is quite old at this point. Now, on the PC most admins use Procon. This is a standalone software with which you can connect to your game server. Change the options, map rotations, game modes, restart a map, load a different map, kick players, ban players, you can do anything. You even have access to plugins that allow you to introduce a region lock or a high ping kick, as well as plugins used for balancing the teams, showing server rules inside the in-game chat and much more. Yes, that admin power can be abused, and it is abused. And a lot of servers are just running with very stupid configurations, especially the auto balancer is often configured in a very strange way. But if the admin would not have that level of control over his server, then I would not want to pay for such a server. So instead of adding all the missing admin functions into the menu of Battlefield 4 on the console, why not simply add support for Procon on the console servers? This means that you rent your server and then you can use Procon for the administration. You can do that by using the standalone tool on the PC or by using the iOS app on your smartphone or tablet. I'm not sure what's the status on the Android app though. Since Procon is already working on the PC, and as we all know, Battlefield is pretty much the same game on all platforms, this should mean that this is relatively easy to introduce on the console version of the game server. So DICE does not have to change the game client, and the admins still get access to all the functions which they need. And this increases the incentive for the players to rent a server. If EA wants to make this even more attractive, then if a player in Greece wants to rent his own Battlefield 4 server on the console, then this server should be spawned in his country and not somewhere in the UK. And with Procon, console players also have access to the plugins I mentioned, like the high ping kicker, which many people on the console want desperately for their servers. But would you even be allowed to use these? The PC is like the Wild West. Players and developers can do what the hell they want. No one is stopping them. The consoles, however, are a much more controlled environment. Sony and Microsoft want to ensure the quality of the software that you can buy for these platforms. And this is why they have technical guidelines for the developers, which they need to respect. If you break one of these rules, then Sony and Microsoft will find out during the certification process of your software, and they will tell you to fix this, or you won't get your software released on that platform. You could compare this to iOS and Android, where iOS is consoles and Android is the PC. The details of these specifications are not publicly available, at least not in the latest versions. If you Google for Microsoft Xbox TCR, then you will find a document from 2009 for the Xbox 360. When we look at TCR 097, which describes games using dedicated servers, then we see that the game server is not allowed to disconnect a player as long as he has a latency of less than 300 milliseconds. Which is no problem if you play chess, but playing a fast-paced first-person shooter with such a high ping is a bad idea. So the TCR says that as long as a player has just 300 milliseconds latency, he must be allowed to play the game. Guess that means that the high ping kicker and the region lock are a no-go, even if we get Procon support for the console. Or maybe not. Game servers that are paid for by the players should be in a grey area, because the game server itself does allow players with up to 300 milliseconds latency. If the admin decides that he wants a server that is just for the community of his country, to only have players who speak the same language, then I don't see how Microsoft and Sony has the right to prevent this player from running such a server. The same applies to latency restrictions. If an admin wants to run such a server for his community, then Sony and Microsoft have no right to prevent him from doing that. It is his server. The only thing DICE should have a look at is the quick match function. I think that it currently only places you on servers that are spawned by the system and not on servers that are rented by the players. If that is the case, then players don't risk to end up on a server where a region lock or a high ping kicker is enabled. But if the quick match function also puts the player on a rental server, then DICE would have to do something if the admin enables the high ping kicker. So by enabling Procon for consoles, the admins would finally get the power they are entitled to get for the server which they pay for with their own money. And in general, EA has to work on increasing the locations at which servers are hosted. The current situation is very bad on the console and not good on PC. If you are currently paying for a Battlefield 4 server on the PlayStation or the Xbox, then please let me know in the comments what you think about getting access to Procon. And if you are a console player, then I'd be interested to know if having access to Procon would be an incentive for you to rent your own server. If you enjoyed this video, then give it a like, subscribe for more, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, have a nice day and take care. My name is Chris, and this was Battle Nonsense.